Welcome to On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton. I'm right next to DKR right now because just moments ago, we heard the coordinators for the University of Texas speak. Got a lot of good information to share with you guys, not only from Kyle Flood, the offensive coordinator / offensive line coach, Pete Kwiatkowski, defense coordinator, and Jeff Banks, special teams coach. They all took to the podium and spoke to a number of media members. I'll start with Kyle Flood. The offense coordinator made no bones about it. I asked him specifically, what are some of your goals for the offense this season? He goes, our goals are always the same, to be the most explosive offense in the country. Now, what does that mean? You know, we talked a little bit about that a year ago, and one of the, problems with Texas a year ago came in the red zone. And Flood talked a little bit more about that and said, look, all we can do is practice to get better. Work harder, and it has been a priority of the offseason for both Steve Sarkisian, himself, and the entire offensive coaching staff. But what I thought was interesting is he goes, look, elite offenses aren't just, first and second down, kill it, score a bunch of points. Elite offenses are elite situationally. And what he means by that was when it's 3rd and 2 and you're in the fourth quarter, you need to get a first down to keep the ball. It is not just about being, having 500 yards of offense. It's also about being elite situationally. And so for him, it's that explosiveness on offense as well as being elite situationally. That's what they're going to try to do for this team this year. I do have some other news and notes that I thought were interesting. Of course, Flood is also the offensive line coach for the Longhorns. And, he said that right now he feels pretty comfortable going as deep as 8 players on the roster. Obviously, the starting 5, along with Cole Hudson and Nato Umeozulu, but he also mentioned Malik Agbo coming on quite a bit and possibly seeing time at a tackle position, even after a Kelvin Banks or Cam Williams, if they were to go down, as well as Jaden Chapman, Trevor Gooseby too. So he is looking at 8 guys right now that he thinks he has really good confidence in, but that could go even further after this fall practice. He said he really doesn't know where everyone is going to be at right now. A couple other things that were asked about the offense overall. One person asked about Quinn Ewers and where he thought he was at this point in time in his development. Flood was really complimentary of Quinn Ewers, saying that he has a calmness, that he's connecting with the players, he thinks, in a really good way. And of course, I asked him about pass protection, or he was asked about pass protection. And one of the things that I thought was really an interesting discussion was he feels like the offensive line is responsible for the integrity of the pass protection, but that pass protection is an entire team sport, basically. So every piece of the puzzle has to be working in concert. And in that regard, he gave really high marks to Tashard Choice. He said, look, if you've had a running back coach that has played in the NFL, like Tashard Choice, it is not an option whether or not you become a good blocker in pass protection. It's an imperative. And he thinks that Tashard Choice really brings that to the room, and the room has bought into that historically under Tashard Choice, and he thinks they're going to be really good in pass protection, in part because of that. Also, you obviously have some wide receivers that can block at times. Tight end has been a big one with Jeff Banks. As we remember, JT Sanders had some issues there, while Gunnar Helm was pretty good. But all in all, pass protections, the integrity of it is due to the offensive lineman, but he also wants to see everybody else fill in the holes. And he gave a lot of props, frankly, to Tashard Choice. All right. Again, on the offensive line, another note I had for Kyle Flood that I thought was interesting. He talked about who the backups were at center. And, we talked about that here on Texas Football quite a bit. We knew Connor Robertson was the number 2 center going into spring camp, and then coming out of spring practice and now heading into fall camp. Didn't know whether or not young true freshman Daniel Cruz would be in that rotation. Right now, Cruz is not the 3rd team center if things happened. That doesn't mean he's not perhaps the most talented center on the roster long term. It's just he wants guys that have actually had some real playing time at the position. And so he's cross-training again this summer training camp. He's going to cross-train Cole Hudson a little bit, as well as Hayden Connor, to back up Connor Robertson at center. So just keep on head on that. He also gave really high marks to Cruz and Brandon Baker as true freshmen. He said that are good teammates and also care a lot about football. He said those are a couple of the markers that he believes will make it a big deal for them. A couple other things I want to mention on Flood before I move on to the defensive side of the football. He was asked if Cedric Baxter and Jaden Blue were the 1-2 punch for Texas, and if there's going to be a 1A and a 1B, or if there's going to be a priority. He gave a very interesting reply, and it's one that, frankly, Jerry Hamilton talked about on Texas Football. He doesn't see it just as Cedric Baxter and Jaden Blue right now. He also mentioned that he's very intrigued to see what exactly Trey Wisner can do as a running back in this offense and go from there. So a lot of different pieces on offense. Let's turn now to defense and Pete Kwiatkowski. Not surprisingly, the very first question out of anyone's mouth, and it was really tongue-in-cheek, what are you going to do without Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat? How do you replace them? His quick response, coach your tail off. That's what you do. That's the only way to do it. He does feel like he has good depth at the position. He's interested to see how some of the newcomers, including Jermaine Lole, as well as Bill Norton, play when pads come on. But he feels pretty good, actually, about the depth at defensive tackle. Of course, he doesn't think he's going to get much else there. I think that the question I asked and got that I was most interested to ask and got a long response from him was, what are your goals for this season for this defense? Because a year ago, he wanted to improve third down. He wanted to improve fourth down. He wanted to improve turnovers and sacks. He said he's looking to get incrementally better in some places. He also took a little bit of exception to some issues on defense in the secondary, not necessarily how you would think. And this is a stat that he threw out there today that I think Texas fans are interested in. Of course, Texas did not have a great pass secondary last year, but he said that Texas was passed against the third most of any team in the country a year ago. They defended that many more passes than the average team out there, in part because they were so good against the run. Teams had to eschew the run and give it all they could to the passing game. He said, so that's a little misnomer there. Or not misnomer, but a little misguided, that concern, because he also felt like he quoted a stat that they finished 33rd in pass defense efficiency. One of the places he really said that he thought they could get better in this year is tackling the people when they do catch the ball. He said tackling in the secondary last year was a big issue for yards after catch or run after catch. He called it rack instead of yak, but run after catch. That makes a lot of sense for Pete Kwiatkowski, because we all know there were some blown coverages, including, I think back to the Amari Niblack touchdown against with Alabama, where Niblack basically broke through 4 or 5 different defenders for a long touchdown after a pass that should have been gone for just 20 yards, ended up going 40 plus. So I get what he's saying. He said that overall the team last year ranked 80, had an 80% tackling ratio. Not quite sure that the kind of numbers he's quoting there or where he's getting those from, but he wants to try to push that up to 85%. He said, look, we can get 85%. Just keep pushing these numbers up a little bit at a time. And then the other thing that I thought was interesting, he mentioned that they felt like they did okay on interceptions last year. He wants to punch the ball out more on fumbles. He thinks they should be getting more turnovers via fumbles as well. And then this is one that he thinks is particular, I think, to the SEC. And one of his goals this year is to be better at what he called block destruction. So in other words, taking on blockers in the hole, shedding blockers, not only in the hole, but also on the outside, on the perimeter at corner and at safety. So those were the big pieces for him. He said all of that combines into let's just be a little bit better. If we can keep getting a little bit better each year, we're all of a sudden going to be a lot better overall. And I think that was a strong takeaway. Another revealing question, and I've been mentioning this on Texas football. PK was asked point blank, who's the guy that you think could surprise people this year? He went with Jalen Gilbo. Gilbo, he said, is just had, quote, an outstanding spring, and is back to where he was pre-injury and even getting better. So Jalen Gilbo is a guy to watch. We've talked about that. I think that he could challenge Jahdae Barron or allow Jahdae Barron to move out to corner if necessary. We talked a little bit today with PK about Barron doing that. We also talked about the cornerback group. Manny Muhammad is another one. He did say that Gavin Holmes has also had a really strong spring and summer workouts. So he's happy with where that's going. And I talked a little bit about Javion Cole. We'll see. He was hesitant to go out there on a limb about who would start other than Manny Muhammad. He was clearly considering Manny Muhammad a starter, but it's one of those pieces. His three, the next thing that I thought that I wanted to talk about that I thought was important, we've asked multiple times, multiple different reporters have asked this of not only Steve Sarkisian, but also Texas as a whole. Who is going to be the guy with the helmet communication? Which defensive player is going to be that? He said, we have not decided that yet. It's either going to be a linebacker or a safety. So that's not likely to be a nickel, and it's not likely to be a corner, but a linebacker or a safety. Let's talk about linebacker next, because he had great things to say about two guys. First of all, I've spent a lot of this offseason talking about whether or not Anthony Hill can make a natural transition to inside linebacker. PK said he is a natural inside linebacker. We played him a lot on the edge last year because, frankly, he wasn't a good linebacker yet for college football. He was a great athlete and a great football player, but not yet a great linebacker. He's trying to mold him into that right now and thinks he's on the way. He called him a natural middle linebacker and a hell of a football player. And so he's excited when he was asked about postseason awards and guys that had opportunities to get that. Anthony Hill was one of the names that popped up for him. As far as David Benda, could not have been more complimentary of a young man than he was of David Benda. Benda did a great job, he said, this off season, and has been a sponge for the last 3.5 years. Also said he bleeds burnt orange. Said if you want somebody in your program to point to try to emulate others, it would be David Benda, would be that guy for you as well. Some other news and notes that I took for him. He talked a little bit about the edges. And when it was asked, I told you what he said about national awards or awards of any kind, and he mentioned Anthony Hill. The other guy he mentioned in that same breath, not in the same breath, but right after that, was actually Trey Moore, the edge. And he is very excited about his edges. PK, if you've seen him speak, is not the most animated speaker at all, or especially not for a coach. But he is clearly happy with his edges. He said Barron Sorrell is the leader of that room. Trey Moore is a guy that he feels is going to be very, very good for him. Ethan Burke, he talked about his length. He talked about Colin Simmons as an athlete, athletic pass rusher. Colton Vasek, he said, is healthy right now and brings some things to the table. So all in all, that defensive line rotation right now, he's very, 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 very happy with on the edge for sure. He did not speak too much about the defensive tackle other than at the very outset when he said he thought Alfred Collins was probably due a good start. He also mentioned, again, and we've talked about this a little bit here on this podcast, about Aaron Bryant being a key role player because he's going to be asked to be that second string nose tackle at this point. Also mentioned Michael Taft favorably, as well as Derek Williams and Andrew Makuba overall. Really good stuff. As far as him and his concern about moving to the SEC, One person asked that, and it was pretty good. He gave PK asked gave a good question, said that, hey, we need to do, or a good answer, we need to do more as far as depth. We need to be more physical because it's a more physical league. And this is something that he brought up that I don't think even Steve Sarkisian has. New venues. He goes, look, we've never played in some of these places. What's it going to be like? What are the things we need to know? Before, we've been to all those other places multiple times. Texas has, etc. But did you just think about this? Texas has 12 games this year. Only one of them is with an opponent they played a year ago. Only one. That may be the first time in the history of the University of Texas that that's occurred from one year to the next. Of course, that's Oklahoma in the rivalry, but Texas will not play a single team they played last year other than OU. So I thought that was pretty adept. He did say that, the idea that the SEC is strictly a run league is a little bit of a misnomer. He said it's a mixed bag. In his opinion, there's RPO, there's run heavy, there's pro style, etc. He said he would not call that exactly that way. Like, he just feels like it's a mixed bag, like it is in just about any conference these days, because so many different offenses are run. Therefore, all right, moving on. Special teams. Talk a little bit about what Jeff Banks had to say today. Really enjoyed his conversation. Congratulated him on his marriage. That was nice. He started off talking about punter, and he gave three names. Two I'm familiar with. Michael Kern, out of St. Thomas Aquinas, said he likes his leg strength, likes him physically, athletically. He's got good quickness to the ball and punting. And then he mentioned two walk-ons, Ian Ratliff, who we've talked about before here, who's out of Atascocita, and then Charlie Ferris. He said those will be the three that are vying for it. He said, I don't know who's going to win the job. That's what this next 30 days are for. So anybody guessing right now for sure who's going to win that job is absolutely guessing, including the coaches themselves. They don't know who's going to stand out. Now, who they do know who's going to start is Bert Auburn. Young man has been a great worker, according to Coach Banks. He says, you're sitting there helping coach him, but really he's already at that age now where he's coaching himself just as much. Said that Bert has been super, super consistent and got a lot of he called him a great ball striker, which sounded like almost like a golf term, but that's how they saw him. Talking mainly about the return game. We've mentioned these before, but Silas Bolden in punt return and Matthew Golden in kick return. That sounds like right now, if they were to line up tomorrow, that would be his best guess out of the gate. Now, he also said, don't forget about Isaiah Bond at punt return, Jaden Blue kick return, potentially Jonte Cook and DeAndre Moore at kick return or punt return as well. He also said that as far as the coverage games and units are thought here, he singled out two people as key to that for him. Neither of them are gunners, which I thought was really interesting. He singled out Michael Taff and Mo Blackwell. He said that those two guys tell other people on the team what to do. They have got it, everything you want, and in spades. They have just seriously taken it upon themselves to teach other players about special teams and the importance of it. He said they have just been tremendous leaders. They have great attentiveness in drills, in the classroom, and they're leaders right now for this Longhorn football team. As far as gunners are concerned, and this is a big one because Texas lost not only Keelan Robinson, the NFL, but also Keaton Crawford to Nevada via the transfer portal. He said that they worked Trey Wisner out there in the spring, and he fared really well. So that's going to be one. The others that you might be on the lookout for as a gunner, maybe Warren Roberson. We've talked about him before, as well as potentially Jelani McDonald or another one of those cornerbacks. He said, look, we have a lot of young players that have length, can run, and now we need to see if they can actually tackle and physically hold up. So I would say, based on his comments, if I were to bet who the Gunners are, Trey Wisner's in one spot, and I think the odds-on favorite right now is not actually Jelani McDonald, but probably Warren Roberson, based on what I'm hearing right now. He also went in depth about one player, and I mentioned him just a minute ago, and that's Michael Taff. And when he was talking about Taff, he said, "Look, he has what he calls a high care factor. Like he really cares about football." He goes, but it's different. It's not like he has a chip on his shoulder about it. He plays like he has a chip on his shoulder, but he doesn't act like he has a chip on his shoulder to his teammates. He's a good teammate, and really appreciates how hard he works, etc. A couple other things he said about his own tight end room, and then I'll finish with one last punting note. Or actually, let me do the punting note, and then I'll finish with his tight end room. He mentioned in the punting, he believes in directional punting, which is a directional based system, and two-step punting. And so he's got to find, when he starts trying to figure out whether it's Michael Kern or Ian Ratliff or Charlie Ferris, he's going to be seeing who can punt left to left, center to center, right to right, or however they need to do it on a directional based system on a two-step punt. All right, talking about tight end, and I'll end it on this. Amari Niblack, he said that they felt like came along strong. Came along in a way that was conducive to his situation. Niblack, if you remember, had some small surgery last spring, so they did not push him hard in spring. They waited a little bit to do that a little bit later, and they feel like he is taken to the workout regimen extremely well at Texas and is ready to go. They think he's going to be a good player for them, as well as Gunnar Helm continues to develop. And Banks called him more of a leader this year. He's really grown and developed in that role. Banks said a lot of great things about Juan Davis. He said Davis blocking in the A gap has been probably one of the more eye-opening things for him. His ability, despite his size, to really be in that category of blowing some people up. So watch for Juan Davis and his blocking ability, not necessarily in line, but more as that H-back on that gap in the A gap as well. Last but not least, he called our guy Jordan Washington, the young tight end out at Langham Creek. Jeff Banks called him, quote, a rising star. Came in at 215, 218, now up to 248 pounds. And he said, you just look at him, you go, wow. He thinks that Jordan Washington might even get some playing time this year, just depending on how everything goes. All right, tomorrow we go back to the practice field and start at around 2:30, 2:45. We'll be breaking in as soon as that practice is over for a special report on Texas football. Also, we'll be back tonight with the live stream. Myself, as well as Aaron Hogan, Rod Babers, going to be talking a little bit about what was said today at this press conference. So if you want more, please join us here at On Texas Football. I also have write-ups on ontexasfootball.com. Remember, you can get a really good deal on a subscription right now, $39.95, $20 off an annual subscription if you use the promo code OTFOG. That's OTFOG, and just push apply, and you get a $39.95 annual subscription. That's the best deal you're going to find anywhere out there in the Texas market. And hopefully you'll join us and become an OG at On Texas Football. All right, that'll do it. We'll have more from the Longhorns on ontexasfootball.com, as well as later tonight on the live stream. For myself, Bobby Burton, this has been a special report from the car here at DKR. Take care.